The night glittered with promise as the city wrapped itself in Christmas lights and quiet snowfall. Inside a grand hotel glowing with gold and warmth, the billionaire moved with effortless confidence, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with powerful partners, perfectly composed. What no one could see was the storm beneath his calm. Before we begin, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and when this story ends, rate it from 0 to 10. Now settle in. For the past year, he had chased success across continents while running from one memory he could never silence. The kind of memory that followed him into boardrooms and hotel suites, into champagne toasts and hollow victories. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was about celebration, about closure, about proving, to himself most of all, that he had moved on. As soft music drifted through the ballroom and laughter echoed under crystal chandeliers, he lifted his glass, ready to embrace the perfect illusion of control. Then the doors opened. At first he barely noticed her. Just another guest arriving late. But when she stepped fully into the light, the world tilted. His breath caught. And then he saw what she held in her arms. Baby. The room didn't spin. The music didn't stop. The guests kept laughing. But inside him, everything shattered at once. Her eyes met his from across the room, steady, calm, carrying a truth he had never prepared himself to face. And in that single heartbeat, surrounded by luxury and strangers, the man who owned everything realized he might have lost the only thing that ever truly mattered. The moment stretched like glass about to shatter. He stood frozen in the middle of the crowded ballroom, the glow of chandeliers blurring into streaks of light as his mind struggled to understand what his eyes were seeing. The woman he had once loved stood only a few steps inside the entrance, snow still dusting the shoulders of her coat, her arms wrapped protectively around a tiny bundle. The baby shifted softly, letting out a small sound that somehow cut through all the music and chatter like a whisper meant only for him. People continued to move around them, unaware that his world had split cleanly in two. Business partners laughed over drinks. Camera flashes sparked near the stage. Somewhere, someone clinked a fork against the glass to call for attention. But all he could see was her. Taller than she used to be, stronger in a way that had nothing to do with muscle. Her eyes, once filled with questions and hope when she looked at him, now carried something quieter and far more powerful, certainty. She didn't rush toward him. She didn't turn away. She simply stood there waiting. His steps toward her felt heavy, as if the floor itself resisted him. Every memory he had tried to bury over the last year pushed back into his chest at once. The laughter they once shared, the arguments he'd never finished, the night he chose pride over love. He had told himself she would heal without him. That time would soften whatever damage he had caused. But the child in her arms proved that time had done something far greater than heal. It had built a life without him. When he stopped a few feet from her, his voice failed him. Words crowded his throat, but none of them felt safe to release. The baby opened wide eyes and gazed up at him, curious and unafraid. In that gaze he saw something unmistakable, his own reflection mirrored in innocence. Her voice finally broke the silence. Soft, steady, unshaken. "We didn't plan to come," she said. "But some truths don't wait forever." His chest tightened. He wanted to deny it. To pretend this was coincidence, illusion, misunderstanding. But nothing about the child in her arms allowed for denial. All his wealth, his power, his control meant nothing in the face of the one thing he had never prepared himself for, consequences wrapped in a small heartbeat. The hallway outside the ballroom felt like another world, quiet, dim, wrapped in soft shadows and garlands of evergreen. The music faded behind them, replaced by the sound of his own unsteady breathing. She walked ahead of him with slow, careful steps, one arm cradling the baby, the other steadying herself against the wall as if the weight she carried was more than just physical. He had faced global negotiations without blinking, stood before crowds that judged every word he spoke. Yet now, walking behind her, he felt smaller than he ever had in his life. She stopped near a tall window where snow drifted softly beyond the glass. The baby stirred again, tiny fingers curling against her coat, and instinctively she adjusted the blanket with tender precision. He watched her do it, the ache inside his chest deepening with every movement. This woman who once leaned on him for everything had learned how to carry an entire world on her own. "You look different," he finally said, the words clumsy and insufficient. "So do you." She didn't turn to face him yet. "The difference is I didn't have the luxury of running from change." Her words landed without anger, without sharp edges, and somehow that hurt more than if she had raised her voice. He swallowed, searching for an apology large enough to match the silence between them. "I never thought I would see you again," he admitted. I didn't think I would see you either, she replied. But life doesn't always respect the plans we make when we're afraid. The baby let out a soft sound, stretching in her arms. Without thinking, he reached forward. His hand stopped inches from the child, trembling. He looked at her for permission, not with confidence, but with the uncertainty of a man who didn't know his place anymore. After a pause that felt like a lifetime, she nodded. The moment his finger brushed the baby's tiny hand, something inside him broke open. The small grip tightened unexpectedly around his skin, warm and firm, full of trust he had never earned. His chest tightened, breath hitching as realization flooded him all at once. This wasn't a story he could walk away from. This was his life, rewritten without his consent, and yet, waiting for him to choose who he would become next. The silence between them grew heavier after that touch, not awkward, charged. He withdrew his hand slowly, as if afraid the connection might vanish too quickly if he moved too fast. The baby yawned, eyelids fluttering, completely unaware that she had just shattered a life built on certainty and control. "She's beautiful," he said at last. The words escaped him without calculation, without defense. A faint, guarded smile touched her lips. "She has a strong will. She cries when she wants to, laughs when she chooses to. No one tells her who to be." The words landed like quiet thunder. For years he had shaped markets, guided companies, decided the futures of thousands. And yet this tiny soul in her arms belonged to no one's command, not even his. "I searched for you more than once," he admitted, his voice low. "Then I convinced myself you had moved on, that you were happier without me." Her gaze finally lifted to his, steady and unflinching. "I didn't have the choice to pause my life just because you disappeared. I had to become strong fast. For her." The baby stirred again, letting out a tiny, restless sound. Instinctively she swayed, gentle and practiced. He watched the motion, stunned by how effortlessly she had transformed into someone new while he had stayed the same man, just richer, lonelier, and far more afraid. "I didn't come here to hurt you," she continued quietly. "I came because hiding the truth was heavier than carrying it." His heartbeat thundered in his ears. "And now that I know, what do you want from me?" She studied him for a long moment, as if weighing every version of the man he had been against the one standing before her now. "I don't want promises," she said. "I only want honesty. With her, and with yourself." The words stripped him of his usual shields. No contracts. No deals. No escape routes. Only a choice, raw and unavoidable. Behind them, faint music drifted from the ballroom again, cheerful and distant. But for him the world had already shifted. And he knew, with terrifying clarity, that whatever came next would demand everything his success had never required: courage. The celebration behind them slowly returned to life, muffled laughter and distant music filtering through the hallway as if the world were reminding him it still existed. But for him time felt suspended. Every sound, every breath seemed to revolve around the quiet rhythm of the baby's tiny movements. "I should go," she said softly at last. "I didn't intend to turn your night upside down. But it already was." And for the first time in years he didn't want to escape the chaos. "Wait," he said quickly, the word leaving his lips with surprising urgency. "Just wait." He hesitated, then added, "Let me walk you out." She studied his face, searching for something. Maybe sincerity, maybe fear, maybe the truth he had hidden from himself for too long. After a moment she nodded. They moved through a quieter side corridor and out into the cold night where snow fell in pale spirals under streetlights. His car waited near the entrance, dark and silent. The baby stirred again, fussing softly, and without thinking, he reached for the door to shield them from the wind. The gesture was small, but it carried weight. She noticed. "You've changed," she said quietly. He let out a slow breath. "I think I'm finally realizing how much I refused to change before." The driver stepped away respectfully as they reached the car. For a moment, the three of them stood in a strange triangle beneath the falling snow, past, present, and a future he never expected. "She deserves stability," she said. "Not confusion. Not uncertainty." "So do you," he answered without hesitation. "And I won't pretend I know how to earn that back. But I want to try." The baby opened her eyes again, wide and observant, staring at him as if measuring the sound of his voice. He felt his chest tighten. "I don't want to be a stranger," he whispered. She looked at the child, then back at him. "Then don't be." The words were simple. But they carried a promise far heavier than any deal he had ever signed. Snow continued to fall as the car pulled away, leaving him standing alone beneath the lights of the hotel entrance. The laughter from inside felt distant now, like it belonged to another lifetime. For the first time that night, he didn't go back to the party. He didn't return to the cameras, the deals, the applause. Instead, he stood there, watching until the fading red lights disappeared into the white blur of winter. He went home to an apartment that had always impressed visitors, but now only echoed. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the baby's hand curling around his finger. Trust without condition. A future waiting not for power, but for presence. By morning, a choice he had avoided for years finally felt clearer than any contract he had ever signed. The next days were awkward. Careful. Honest. He showed up without announcements, without expectation. Sometimes just to sit quietly across the room. Sometimes to listen. Sometimes simply to learn. He learned how fragile courage could feel. How humbling it was to begin again without titles. How love didn't arrive with applause, but with patience. And slowly something fragile began to grow. The baby learned his voice. She turned her head when he entered a room. She smiled when he spoke to her. For the first time in his life, success had nothing to do with numbers or headlines. It lived in moments no one could measure, small laughter, quiet evenings, steady trust. One night, as he stood by the window holding the child while soft streetlights spilled across the room, she looked up at him and laughed. A deep, surprised laugh that echoed from somewhere ancient in his chest. He laughed too, tears blurring his vision. And in that moment, the billionaire who once believed control was everything finally understood the truth. He didn't need to own the world to feel complete. He only needed to show up for the one small heartbeat that had already changed it forever.